as we know that today's webinar is basically the mean versus MERN. Okay. And the GUVI, I got an opportunity for GUVI to host it. So definitely now moving directly with the key takeaways for today's webinar. Okay. So the key takeaways for this webinar would be understanding the mean and the MERN stack, and basically understanding what is the technical stack, like what is a tech stack. Like suppose I ask you what is a tech stack basically, so you should be knowing what is the tech stack. And many a people, if I take the interview, so many a people get confused if I ask what tech stack they have used. Okay, so we will understand the real meaning of the tech stack before directly jumping onto the mean versus MERN. Okay, and again, the key takeaways, or what we say the index for this webinar would be, second would be the component libraries and the UI frameworks. Okay, we will study about the difference between the libraries, the frameworks in a common terms. Like suppose if I ask you what is a function and a method, right? There is a very slight difference if we say in the function and methods, both serve the same things, or we say the difference between the arguments and the parameters, the same difference in the library and the framework over here. But obviously there is a difference, and but we say and miscommunicate with the others that we are using the library or we are using the framework. Okay, we should be familiar like what's the difference between the library and what is the difference between the framework. Okay, and where to use what and what to use where. Okay, we have to be very much peculiar about it. Okay, the third takeaway for this webinar would be the productivity and the learning curve. Okay, means the very short summary of this would be like how we would be learning. Like suppose if I ask you, if anyone asks you, GUVI ask you to study about the MERN, or we would be studying about the React, or we would be studying about the Node. So every technology, everything which you take up has a learning curve. Okay, if you say 2 plus 2 has a learning curve initially of that time as very tough, right? Because you don't have the idea about the operators, you don't have the ideas about the addition, subtractions and all. But yeah, if you take it now, definitely it's a very small and it's very easy for you, right? So similarly the learning curves depends, and we'll study which one Angular or which one React, or which basically the mean versus MERN learning curve. Okay, we'll study about that. And the fourth one would be the community support and the ecosystem deployment and maintenance. Okay, definitely. To summarize this, basically, if you ask about the mean and the MERN, right, the both are very familiar and very like sort of the famous tech stacks nowadays. Okay, the main thing is now we will study about which ecosystem is this, and which basically the which community is supporting it. Okay, like suppose we say the Angular community, or we say the React community, or we basically say the MERN or the MERN mean community, which community is taking much more part in the role of the development and its maintenance. We'll study about that. Okay, and moreover, the last and the not the least, we will study about the real world use cases and the success stories. Okay, like suppose in our real world companies, like suppose Flipkart, or we say the Amazon, or very simple we say the GUVI, which web technologies they would have integrated in making their sort of the architecture, right? So we'll study about that. Okay, so as I told you, moving further, we'll study about what is a tech stack. First of all, let me see what the question is. Yeah, we'll discuss that also, which salary wise what we say and all, right? We'll study about that in the real world scenarios. Okay, no, don't worry. Yeah, so very first thing is we should know what is a tech stack. Okay, if we say a tech stack is nothing only in the client side, or not only in the server side, but it takes as a whole, right? Like suppose you say the client side web technologies. Okay, like suppose you say the JavaScript, you say the HTML, you say the CSS, right? The technologies which is it is contributing to create it, right? Like suppose you say the backend, like suppose you have a project you have created in Python, right? So definitely the Python is the programming language which have contributed in making your server side thing, right? Along with that, you say the database, right? Definitely if you are storing your data, so your Python is contributing and sending your data, you're contributing to your data to the database, right? And definitely the operating system is the underlying layer of your server. Like suppose everyone says that I have a server, this is a server, and all those stuffs, right? So how the server is basically contributing your to your server side code, or you say the backend code, is this particular thing, right? There is an operating system of every server, right? Like suppose a Ubuntu server, or you say, or something, a sort nginx server or something like that, right? There is an always an operating system, and above that operating system the server is being deployed. Okay, your server is being generated. Okay, and that server contains multiple programming languages, that contains the databases, that contains a web frameworks. Okay, like suppose you create a very simple sort of a server side or backend stack with a Django, right? Django is a web framework of Python, right? And the programming language definitely of Django, as I told, is a Python, right? The database, you can use the Mongo and all those stuffs. So database, definitely it's your choice. You can use the NoSQL, you can use the SQL. We'll study about that, that which particular database you have to choose. But yeah, definitely when you create a backend code, when you create a backend tech stack, all of these three stacks of these three components plays a major role. Okay, starting from the operating system up till the web framework. Okay, your database, your web server, your programming language, your operating system, everything plays a major role. If you suppose you have a Windows sort of a server, right, and you are trying to do something that is not supported on that particular operating system, right, that Windows one, so definitely the choice of uh, backend technology is very crucial, right? What you choose will basically give you the output in a coming years and a coming months. Okay, definitely it should be a very wise choose to do in a backend. And similarly in the front end, if you have a very simple architecture, like suppose a very simple application using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so these sort of things, whether you do in a client side, whether you do in a server side, all of those compromises, and it basically makes as a tech stack. Okay, now coming on to the next thing, what is a mean stack? Okay, definitely you might have been familiar with the things like the people would be saying, yeah, I'm learning about the mean stack, I'm learning about the MERN stack. Okay, so definitely you have to be familiar with the mean stack and the MERN stack thing. So I have written what is a mean stack, and with that I've written the framework based. That means like it's a framework. So first of all, I want to tell you the difference between a framework and the library. Okay. See, I know everyone would be here like for getting the real world scenarios of which one to choose. Okay. Which one has the highest salary and all. But yeah, you should choose wisely. It's not always the salary, right? If I give you the work and if not your choice, okay, and you are getting a pain to learn it, and you are getting a much salary, but you are not satisfied with the work, right? And what you are learning, you are getting a lot of pain in learning, so it's not a mean, right? It's not that thing, right? So we have to choose it wisely, and definitely the growth we will study that is almost the same, right? It's 1920 difference, but yeah, it is almost the same. So first of all, we should know what is a framework. Okay, like suppose a framework is nothing but we say that a framework of the JavaScript. That means that it has the predefined code structure which has already been deployed. Okay, like suppose you init the Angular project. Okay, you initiate with the Angular project, and as we know, it's a framework of the JavaScript. You will get the predefined structure of the Angular project once you get the initialization done. Okay, you will get the folders. Okay, yeah, we'll do it, money, yeah, we'll do it. Let's complete this and definitely we'll ask you the questions. Okay, we suppose init the Angular project, we get the folders and the files with it. Okay, that means and framework basically follows the strict rules while developing it. Okay, you get a very much less of the sort of the customizable things to do. Like suppose, and when once you do the React thing, as we know, React is a library based JavaScript library. Okay, it's a basically the JavaScript library when we say the React. Okay, so we say once it's a library, so you get the lot of freedom to play with it. Okay, but in a framework you don't get a lot of framework as like freedom as compared to the library, that is the sort of the React. Okay, so now here the MERN stack. we say the Angular is a framework based. Okay, that means once you init it, you get the less freedom to play with it. Okay, and moreover, as we can say, the mean is an acronym for is an acronym for the MongoDB, ExpressDB, AngularJS, and the Node.js. Okay, the A part in mean and the R part in the MERN is the only difference. Okay, the MongoDB, that is the NoSQL database. We'll discuss it in the coming slides. The ExpressDB, okay, the sort of the framework, the server-side framework, the ExpressDB plays the ExpressJS basically. It's not the DB, there's a typo. Okay, so ExpressJS plays the sort of a server-side framework. The AngularJS, definitely we know, is the framework of JavaScript, and the Node.js is the environment setup, right? The JavaScript requires an environment, right? Where to run, where to like start with the server, right? So Node.js plays an important part of that. Okay, so now uh, we say we'll start with a MongoDB, right? So we'll start with a MongoDB, which is the common in both the MERN and the mean. Okay, like suppose very simple example, we have a relational databases. All of you might have be familiar with the same things like what is the relational databases, how to create the tables, how to create the data bases and all. Definitely MongoDB also has the same, but definitely there are also the differences and pros of it, right? We don't store the data, we don't store the data in the relational databases, means that column and row basis in a MongoDB. We have a sort of a collection, means that we have a sort of a collection which basically stores the data in the form of a binary JSONs. Okay, like suppose you are familiar with the JSON, right? It's an array or object, right? And it stores the sort of a data in terms of the JSON. So you get a lot of flexibilities to edit it, to view it, and all those stuff. Right. In terms of the scalability, also MongoDB, that is a NoSQL database, gets a lot of flexibility in terms of the scalability also. Okay, it can be easily more scalable once you have a very big sort of projects. Okay, now suppose you get some time. Okay, please do research about the MongoDB in more definitely, and how it is different from the other sort of things, right? uh, just a second. Yeah, so there is a sort of a comparison I have done with the MongoDB and the SQL, right? Both are the databases, definitely both are the databases, right? We have taught about that the SQL part takes as a table, right? But in MongoDB we say that table as a collection. Okay, as we have told that in a collection we store the data in the terms of the binary JSONs. Okay, in a sort of JSONs. Okay, and over here you don't have the joins. Okay, the very familiar terms what we get in an interviews, what we see in a real time scenarios of like a MySQL or a SQL database servers is a joins, right? When you have to join the two tables, right? Definitely in MongoDB also you can do the same, but it is called by the term aggregation. Okay, so almost the like what we say, the way to do is different, but it is doing the same thing, right? If you put the nose from the right angle, or if you put the nose from behind the scene, it is definitely the same thing, but yeah, it is the procedures and the way to do it is something different. Okay, in keeping in mind the coming future things, right? In the coming future, like suppose the client comes with the requirement, right? Very simple requirement that you have to scale your database. Like suppose you have the horizontal scalability and the lateral vertical scalability, right? Horizontal scalability, like suppose you are not adding at one server, you are like spreading it over the different networks and servers, right? So keeping in all that minds, you have to basically think in the terms of the security. You have to think there are multiple factors that affect and choose in between the SQL and the MongoDB. But yeah, definitely the MongoDB, if you tell, it can take everything what SQL has, and it has other things also in terms of the security, in terms of the scalability, okay, and everything. And it moreover gives the performance testing ways also. Means you can see the dashboards also properly. You can have the performance measurements also. So everything. Once you install the MongoDB, once you install the Compass, Atlas, right? These are the two tools for the MongoDB connection settings and all, right? Once you install it and see it, definitely you will find a difference with one with the MySQL and one with the MongoDB, right? So definitely you can find the difference. And yeah, so you can see over here, right, in comparison with the SQL server, MongoDB is faster and more scalable, right? MongoDB fetching the data is the main part, right? Suppose I give you the task to fetch the data from the framework would be suppose Python, right? The Django, but the database, I choose one at MongoDB, another I choose suppose MySQL, right? So definitely you will get a faster response as compared with the MySQL, right? MongoDB is more dynamic and complicated choice that is appropriate for hierarchical data. Okay, suppose you have a very hierarchical data. You have a name field, and inside the name field, you have a first name, last name, middle name, and all, right? Suppose you have a very hierarchical data. It is the better choice for more handling the dynamic data, hierarchical data, and all, right? Suppose you have a very big data with the hierarchical things, definitely the MongoDB is the better choice for it. And the features, what are the factors affecting the choice of database is scalability, the support and development. Definitely, if you become the database engineer or database support engineers, you will understand how to support, and you will then get to know how the MongoDB and how the SQL databases are different, right? MongoDB in sense the NoSQL databases and the SQL databases are different. Got it? Now, yeah, moving back to the MERN stack. Okay, now the M part is done, and the comparison with the sort of the current SQL, what we say is being done. Okay, now moving on to the Express JS part of it. Okay, so Express JS, as I told, is a backend web application development framework. Okay, like suppose you have to create a very simple, suppose I give you the very simple task of creating a server. Okay, you can create the server without Express also, right? Suppose using HTTP, right? But Express not only creates the server, but it also plays a very important part in routing your APIs and giving the controls to their controllers and all, right? Express.js has a very much sort of an intercepting part to get the middlewares integrated with the server created and all, right? So it's not only the server, right? You have to in a coming future, like suppose I ask you to create a very simple sort of a middleware for authentication, right? Like suppose authentication using a GitHub and all, right? So definitely in those part of a things, you have to create a sort of a middleware in which the Express.js, which is a basically a web application development framework for the backend, plays a very major and vital role. Okay, the HTTP can also do the same thing, which HTTP server can also do the same thing, but yeah, the Express.js, though is a application framework, it has a much more sort of a handleability, you say, to handle all those things, right? So Express.js plays a important role in this. That is the E part of the mean and the MERN both. Okay, and now coming on to the Node.js, right? It's a very simple, like as you know, for running the React, for running the Node.js applications, for Vue.js, right? For everything, what you have a JavaScript, right? The engine, right? What you want the engine to be run for that particular perspective, Node.js is an initial and basically the very vital sort of installations and environment setup you have to do, right? Like suppose you have to do the React setup, right? Or JavaScript setup, right? So definitely you run the application with the help of the Node. So it basically gives you the sort of a platform where you can run the JavaScript programs, right? So Node.js is the very vital part of the N, right? Without the Node, you can't do anything. Without E, you can create a sort of an application using HTTP, as I told. Without the M, you can create a tech stack. Without the M means you can create an application with the relational databases, but without the N, you can't do anything, right? So N is a very important part of it. Okay, as I told, MongoDB data is a database system. Express.js, that is a backend web app framework, And AngularJS, that is a front-end web framework, and the Node.js, the back-end runtime environment. Okay, without the environments, we can't do anything. Now we'll take a little pause and yeah, we'll ask you the questions if we have in between. Yeah. Any questions? Hari, can we ask them to like unmute themselves? Like,
Yeah, they can just put it in the chat box.
yeah.
They can answer. Guys, just try to utilize the chat box.
Yes, yes, yes. Hello, hello. Can you please tell me the duration of the lecture? Yeah,
Do you
okay.
have any questions? If not, so we can
Any
move on.
questions for the MERN? Like, we'll study about the Angular later. Okay, what I have like done is, like, what I have taught is like what is a M part of mean and the MERN, what is the E part, and what is the N part. Okay, so any questions in this vital first part of it, like understanding the MongoDB, how it is different from the SQL databases, or like how the Express.js can be used, or is it compulsory to use the Express.js, or without the node can we run it or not? Look, these sort of questions are there or not, like, or else we can like start with the second or like the next things, like what is the Angular. So the next part I have to start with the Angular. So any questions before that, or I shall start? Like, I guess no questions up till okay. SQLite, SQL, and MongoDB are the same. No, see, the MongoDB, as I told, is a NoSQL database. Okay, and sorry for that. ExpressDB, it is ExpressJS, as I told. It is a typo over there in the PPT. Okay, so it's not the ExpressDB, it's the ExpressJS. Okay, and the MongoDB, SQL, and SQLite. Okay, see over here in this thing. Okay, over here in this thing, as we have compared the MongoDB and the SQL, and if we compare the SQLite also versus SQLite, okay, so SQL and the SQLite are almost the same, means they use the relational table and the databases, and rows and column wise they particular store it, right? The SQLite is basically a lighter version of the SQL, right? Like suppose you create a very simple Android applications, right? The sort of the databases what they used to do at the Android development phase was the SQLite, right? The SQLite was playing the major role once you create a like the Android application things, right? And the SQL is definitely the same what I told, the relational databases. And the MongoDB is a database, definitely it is a database, but the way to store it's totally different, right? Once you open the SQL server and you see a very simple create like a table, you will see a table in the form of rows and columns, right? But once you open the MongoDB tool, that is like a compass or an atlas or something, so you will see that it's been stored in the form of a JSON, right? As you are familiar with some little bit of JavaScript, a JSON is nothing but a key and a value pair. Okay, so it is stored in the form of a key and a value pair. And definitely, as I told, it is more like familiar, it is more easy for the complicated choice of things. Like suppose you have a very big data, right? Like suppose you are a big data engineer and you want to play with the data, you want to play with the data, definitely as a client and definitely as a technical expert, you will go and choose the MongoDB, right? In the terms of the scalability, in the terms of fastness, right? How much fast it is, right? So definitely MongoDB and SQL are different, and the MongoDB is faster and it's more scalable in terms, right? It can expand to the different servers, right? You can fetch the data with much more performance, right? Like suppose you get the data in 1 minute, right? Suppose you get the data from the SQL server in 1 minute. So as compared with the SQL server, the MongoDB will get you fetched in hardly 12 to 13 seconds, right? So that is a sort of a difference. I'm not saying the practical thing, but yeah, if you see the difference, like in 1 minute and 13 to 15 seconds, there is a sort of a difference, right? So MongoDB is much more faster. And moreover, the support and maintainability, right? That is also important. Like suppose it's not only the development, right? You will definitely get a bugs once you develop something, or you develop any sort of a using any sort of a technology, but the maintenance part also plays a very vital and major role, right? So similarly, the MongoDB community, the MongoDB supportability, the sort of dashboards and sort of the sort of tools it provides on the Compass and Atlas sort of a things are very much, right? MongoDB has a very like interactive sort of a CLIs and all tools and all. So definitely you can do any n number of things on the MongoDB, and it's more of a sort of a combination, right? Once you do the MERN, right? So the it's a combinational stack is of M is very much vital, right? So that is why it's like said like the M part of the MERN and the mean is very much important, right? Because if you don't have a data, you can't do anything, right? So getting the faster data with better performances also plays a major role as you compare with the node or sort of other things. Okay, so got the things? Yeah, definitely you can develop the website Java with vanilla JS, definitely with a JavaScript, yes, but yeah, you have to yeah, HTML and CSS and JavaScript, right? You can definitely uh, create an application just with the JavaScript, not with the any other sort of frameworks or library. Definitely that is a sort of a enhancement sort of a thing. Like suppose you see a very simple ICT applications 20 years back, suppose, right? 20 years back, then ICTC application was just the JavaScript, jQuery and Ajax. Okay, but now you see a lot many sort of the components, you see a lot many um sort of see headers and footers and interactive sidebars and all. So they are migrating to these sort of frameworks and libraries, right? The ICT application, ICTC applications, yeah. So definitely if you tell in terms of a JavaScript, or you say in the terms of the libraries and frameworks are just the wrappers over the JavaScript library, right? So what I said it over here is the same, right? What the question is, right? JavaScript, CSS and HTML, right? You can create the application with just three of the things as well. You can't, like, it's not the mandatory that you like you want the Angular, you want the React and all, but yeah, with these three things you can do this. Okay, so anything else? Yeah, definitely. So now further questions will be answered like from the Akash. We would be answering it in the next Q&A. Okay, so will, because the thing is this MERN versus mean, it's not yet completed. So I want that everyone are on the same page, and then we are answering this. So I remember this question. I will answer this, Akash, at the end. Okay. Okay, now moving further. Okay, so now understanding the angular part of the A, that angular part of the mean, right? So Angular JS, first of all, has a very good background. Like suppose if you're going and choosing with a very first of a thing, like suppose you choose an Angular or you choose an React. So definitely both of them come with a very good background. So as I have highlighted over here in this slide, that Angular JS came and it's being developed by the Google community. Okay, and it's basically a discontinued free and open source JavaScript based web application for developing the single page applications. Okay, it was maintained and created mainly by the Google and the community of individuals and corporations. Okay, so Angular JS is a very older part of it. Like suppose if you compare the React and the Angular, right? Angular JS came around like you say 11 12 years back. Okay, and React recently became famous and it was being developed by the Facebook. Okay, now coming to the React, the Angular features. Sorry, so the features of the Angular are the efficient two-way data binding. Like suppose you want to have the data binding from the client to server and the server to the client. Okay, so means I say if I ask you the question and you respond me back, right? The client send you the something and the client sort of bind that data with the client. So there is uh, a sort of a flow that comes when you use the sort of AngularJS, right? The sort of an MVC architecture. So like MVC architecture, if we say the sort of a model view controller architecture, right? If everything has an architecture, like suppose I create one sort of an thing that has a very simple application. Like suppose the what you say, the Uber application, right? The what you see is a model. Like what you see is a basically the view. Okay, the view part of it means the model view controller architecture. The V part of it is a view that you see, right? The model is basically, you say, as an database. Okay, definitely you want to store your data, you want to sign in, you want to sign up, right? Where you type in is a view, where it sends it is the model, and the one who sends it is a controller. Okay, so the one I'm repeating this, the MVC architecture is a very like older architecture, but yeah, it's a very common and it's been used widely. So MVC architecture, I'm repeating it again. Once, like suppose you open a very simple application, you see that application, that is a view part of it. Okay, the one who sends that application data which you typed in to the particular database, the database is here called as a models. Okay, it's really sorry, the database here is called as a model. Okay, the M part of the model, right? The one who sends that data from the view to the model is the controller. Okay, so the Angular basically follows this MVC architecture. Okay, these two are the very important sort of a features which make it alive. Okay, like suppose I'm living, so the reasons for my existence are these two things. Okay, the MVC architecture and the efficient two-way data binding. Okay, and the 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 next important sort of a feature is of the Angular JS is the TypeScript usability. Okay, so TypeScript and the JavaScript are almost the same. Okay, but the TypeScript gives you the on-demand sort of a syntactical credibility. Like suppose you are typing, right? You're writing a very simple code in TypeScript, right? You will get the error that then and there at the sort of a runtime. So the TypeScript has the sort of the thing that basically gives you the runtime applications, runtime errors. Okay, so Angular uses the TypeScript for its development. Okay, so Angular has these three sort of features, and basically, yeah, you can do the and develop the progressive web applications. So that is also some familiar with and common with the React part of it. So I will summarize with the Angular, right? So first of all, the one who developed this is the Angular, is the Google. Okay, and the features which kept it is alive is the MVC architecture, two-way data binding, and the TypeScript part of it. Okay, as you can see in this particular sort of the Venn diagram, or you can say the TypeScript, the improved dependency injections, okay, the improved data binding, okay, the improved routing, the browser support, and the cross-platform. Okay, cross-platform means if you have created a very simple sort of an application, a web application, okay, in one sort of device, right? You want to run it somewhere else in the like suppose in a different sort of a Ubuntu system or what, you can definitely host it, right? So if you have created an application in a Windows machine, on your desktop or the laptops, okay, you can host and run that application in Ubuntu also. So that sort of cross-platform independencies are there in Angular and React both. Okay, but these three things are important. Okay, now this slide is the same. Okay, now coming the now basically the MERN, the main part of it is completed, right? The MongoDB, the Express.js, the AngularJS, and the Node.js. Now basically the initial comparisons are done. I won't say that the everything I have covered in the Angular. Definitely there are a lot many things to get it in the difference part of way with the Angular and the React part of it. But yeah, the basic genre what I wanted to communicate for the Angular JS part of it is completed. Okay, the who created it, what are the features, it's been completed. Now we have to study about what is the R part, or we can say what is in whole the MERN stack. Okay, so as I've told, the MERN is an acronym of the MongoDB, the Express.js, React, and the Node. Okay, so you might have felt the differences only in the React and the Angular part of it. Okay, so React part is basically the React JS is a JS JavaScript library that allows the development of the user interfaces for mobile apps and the single page applications. Okay, so now you can focus onto this word library. Okay, so library, as I have told, it gives you the more freedom to get the development done. Okay, means the freedom means, like, suppose you have created a React application, you have created and initiated a React application, you will get all the sort of a folders with the files like app.js, the favicon icons, or the index.js and all, right? The pack, and along with that you get the package.json, right? The only index.js and basically the package.json is the important file. Apart from that, you can delete every file. Okay, you can remove every file and you can create your own architecture of the code from the scratch. Okay, so React gives you the flexibility for that. Moreover, instead of java .js extension, you can create the applications using .jsx extension. So what is .jsx? So JavaScript with an sort of an HTML included in it. Like, suppose you create a very simple HTML uh, thing, right? And you want to convert that HTML into your React component. Okay, so definitely you can do that, and you can convert that particular HTML code into your React component using this .jsx extension. So React gives you the more flexibility for doing all those sort of experimentals and sort of a things, right? But as I have told, Angular don't have that sort of the comparison, like the sort of what we can say, the sort of the feasibility factor in the Angular is very much less as compared to React. Okay, apart from the React, in the package of JSON and the index file I have told, everything you can delete and you can create your own components and the files. So that sort of a flexibility is there in the React. Okay, so the same part is over there in MongoDB, as I've told, Express.js and the Node.js. So there is no sort of a point to repeat it. Okay, now coming to the next thing. So what is basically and how to compare now? Like, we have known about the Angular part of it and the React part of the MERN. So now we have came towards the comparison, like how to compare and which part of the stack we have to choose, or why we have to, like, suppose Adarsh, I'm not wrong, you have asked one question that why we have to use the MERN or a mean over the JavaScript. Like, suppose you have created an application in only the JavaScript, HTML and CSS, and you don't want to use any sort of a frameworks or libraries. Okay, this also question comes, right? Which others, I guess, have asked. Yeah. So the answer for this question is, like, sort of, like, suppose you have, as I have told, like, about the ICTC application, right? You have been using for the performance thing, right? You have to be very much in the performance thing. You don't have to compromise. Okay, and moreover, we have the MERN thing that has a much more like, helps to code faster and load the data fast. Like, suppose you have an application which takes 30 seconds to load your UI, your front end, right? And you have a sort of a library which is a MERN, which hardly takes 10 seconds or 5 seconds to load your entire thing, right? So that is the comparison tool which has to be in kept. Okay, architecture is a second factor which you have to think in mind, right? As I have told, the Angular has a sort of the MVC architecture. Right, but whereas in a MERN, you just had a very simple three-tier architecture. Means, for the architecture, you should have the presentation layer. Okay, means the one that is visible to the user. Okay, then you should have the application sort of about the different layers. Okay, but just get the difference that MERN has a much more flexible sort of an architecture, and the mean always follows the MVC architecture. Okay, and now the sort of a productivity. Okay, as we can see, the MERN offers the low productivity. Okay, see, it doesn't mean that MERN is always we have to choose, or it always has the pros, right? No, it always depends upon the requirements, right? The client requirements, the sort of a business ideas, whether the project you have to create is an enterprise level applications, or you have to create an application for your basic learning, or you have to create an application for the normal architectural perspective. So multiple factors affects when you choose the MERN or a mean. Okay, I'm telling you the difference in the terms of these factors. Okay, the performance of the MERN is faster as compared to the mean. Okay, the second factor which affects the architectural thing is the MERN has a much more flexible architecture. Okay, and the mean, as I've told, is a MVC architecture. Okay, but in the terms of the productivity, the MERN offers the low productivity, but whereas the mean offers the better productivity. Okay, and moreover, the MERN, since it's uh, it's actually the MERN. It's all like it's 7 to 8 years. Like it was previously been developed, right? So MERN, it's now developing. It's growing. Okay, in terms of the famous things and its terms of the popularity, but the mean it's since it's a this older version of the JavaScript framework, so it has the sort of more libraries which are ready to use. Okay, like suppose I've been like famous for 20 years, and I've been in the development phase for 20 years. I offer you the better libraries. Okay, I know more the market. I know everything, right? But MERN is growing, and it's get gaining the sort of a popularity in terms of that. Okay, it is hardly like 2 or 3 years left that MERN and mean will almost be the same, right? In every terms, like in terms of the performance, in terms of the architecture, in terms of the productivity, in terms of the third party libraries. Okay, and moreover in the support also, right? Support means, like suppose you have a very big community, okay, and which is ready to give you the support in every terms, in the terms of the library, in terms of the code. So definitely mean has a sort of a big community support because it's been into the market for the many years. Okay, MERN is also getting better day by day, but yeah, it will take time and a year and a two to achieve the level that mean has achieved for the past 15-20 years. Okay, but yeah, in the terms of the data flow, the mean is in a bi-direction, means it gives you the client to server and server to client, as I have told, the sort of the things. But yeah, in the MERN, it only has a unidirectional. Okay, unidirectional and bidirectional, as if no, you guys might be knowing it. Okay, means from the client to server, right? That sort of a things you can do in a MERN, but on the mean there is a bidirectional. But yeah, in the MERN also, you can say that there is a lot of things you can do. Like suppose you might be familiar with the React Redux, right? If you're not familiar, there is a concept in a tool in a React that is called as a Redux. Okay, which helps to maintain your uh, datas and states and all. So that is something technical which we would be learning it further. But yeah, you should be knowing it how the data flow is different in the Angular and the React. Okay, so it's a MERN, it's a mean, it's a bidirectional. In the MERN, it's a unidirectional. Okay, these were the factors which I have told. Okay, now basically, think like suppose I am a client. Okay, very simple example. I'm a client. Okay, and I came to your company. Okay, suppose I came to GUVI and you guys are working in a GUVI. Okay, and you tell me, and I give you the requirements. Okay, suppose I want my enterprise level application, right? The applications which I want to host it for the end users, which are basically working in a big bazaar, or the applications which are being used in sort of a DMarts and all, right? That sort of enterprise level application. So definitely there are multiple factors which you will be taking in care, and tell me as a technical specialist that we would be following this sort of an architecture, we would be following either mean or a MERN. So there should be a sort of a factors affecting this sort of a discussions, right? Like see these sort of a discussions which technically proven people like you guys would be in the future, you will be choosing it whether it is a mean or a MERN, right? So definitely for the learning perspective, you have to get over with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, just for the learning perspective, definitely if you're learning, if you're growing perspective in the initial phases, HTML, CSS and JavaScript, and if you can use the jQuery also for loading and rendering data and all, you can use that. But if you want to develop in the real sense, either for the enterprise level or the small scale industrial levels, you have to choose either the MERN or the MEAN. Okay, now is, as I have told, the mean stack being as a better option for a large scale applications. Okay, you have a architecture, right? I mean, what the architecture it follows is a MVC architecture. Okay, you have a models created, you have a controllers created. Okay, you have the views for it, right? So you can do everything with that MVC architecture. Okay, the main reason for choosing it, the two main reasons for choosing it is library supports. Okay, like suppose your application needs a lot many libraries. Okay, the third party libraries, the support to it, definitely you won't be thinking in a second opinion to choose anything else. Okay, if you can compromise little a bit with the library supports or something, or sort of a community support things, you can choose MERN also. Okay, so see, the again I'm telling, the sort of requirement is the very first thing that you will get, and then depending upon the requirements you would be choosing between the mean and the mode. Okay, the client wants the performance to be the first priority, right? So you can't say that mean we have to do, or the client wants the application supposed to be built in a 10 days, 12 days, 15 days or something like that, suppose X days. Okay, which is you want that if you are new to the mean stack or a MERN stack, the learning curve for the MERN stack definitely will take a less time for you to get familiar with the library. Okay, basically I'm telling about the React part of it. Okay, and similarly the mean is little bit having a steeper learning curve, so you will take a lot of time. It depends on the person to person, but yeah, as compared with the React, it will take lot of time to get and familiar with the things. Okay, but yeah, if a large scale application comes, you have a lot of time. Okay, and you want a good sort of a community support, you want a sort of everything that has to be managed, you can go with the Angular. But definitely you can go with the Angular, but yeah, definitely you have to little a bit compromise with the performance. Okay, the performance of the things, and applications, the DMart applications, the Big Bazaar applications, or any sort of Walmart applications and all, which the end users are not the direct consumer users, right? The end users will be your sort of the executives, the sales executive persons and all. So definitely they will they can compromise little a bit in milliseconds and seconds with the performance. So they don't have to think much, right? So mean will be the better choice for them, right? But if you have sort of an companies like Netflix, or you have a sort of a LinkedIn applications or Facebook or Ubers or Ola or something like that, so definitely these sort of applications never compromise with their sort of the performances, right? The performance differences are very minute, but if you get the summation things of it, it can add it up to the seconds also. Like I will give you the very simple example in my current organization, which I'm in, Sony. Okay, we are basically working in one application which the optimizations we want in milliseconds, right? See, the level is milliseconds, right? So we are worried even for the milliseconds. So definitely the clients also want the performances and everything, the optimizations to the very minute things as well. So we have to think in that way that even the microseconds can add up to the seconds and the minutes. Okay, so we have to think in that much scenarios. Okay, and moreover, if we can say the MERN, and moreover we can say the Angular, right? It is also like growing day by day. It is giving more better versions, like 16th versions currently, and you can say the older versions, which was Angular JS, right? The Angular JS and basically the Angular are little a bit different, the way to write the code, or you can say how to define it. But yeah, Angular and Angular JS are both of the same domain, means from the Angular, right? If we say Angular, means it includes both the Angular JS and the normal Angular version 16, which they currently into the market. Okay, and the current React version is 18th version. Okay, so means they are getting upgraded in the lot of in a very short span of time. Like suppose they have last year they had like deployed the 17th version. Now they have been using the 18th, and we can hear that by the year end they would be using the 19th version. So in a year, if they are planning for the 2 version releases, 3 version releases, so definitely the community is also growing, and the demand is also growing, and the development phase of that particular React itself is also growing, right? So we can't say that the Angular, it's not the sort of a better opinion. No, React is only familiar, and we are familiar with the React, so React is better. No, we have to be familiar, we have to get the differences, then we have to choose with the basis of the requirement analysis, that what we have to choose. Okay, so the companies like React are using the Uber, Netflix, and the LinkedIn, and many more, etc. And the companies which are using the Angular are the Upworks, Google, YouTube, and all, right? So it is fine. Like, so what I'm saying is, it's a very minute difference, right? Very, very minute difference. But yeah, the performance, when you see as a user, right? So you don't want as a client to compromise it. So definitely Uber have chosen over the performance and many other things in React to create their applications. Okay. Now, coming to the productivity and the learning curve. Okay, definitely what I have told. See, in the Express part, the Mongo part, and the Node.js part. Okay, definitely if you are choosing these two, either to mean or a MERN for your stack purpose, so definitely you have to study and you have to learn, right? Definitely, right? You are like, suppose learning the Node.js, so you would be covering all these three terms what you are seeing it, like Express.js, MongoDB, and Node at once and a time. Why? Because you would be creating the Node.js as an environment, right? You would be using the Node.js as an environment. Now you would be creating a server. Okay, means you would be creating you would be needing creating a server. You would be creating a web application framework, okay, for the backend. So that will be taken care with the help of the Express.js. Okay, and obviously if you are handling the backend thing, so definitely for data storage and all those perspective, you would be needing a MongoDB. So see, apart, without MongoDB also, as I've told, relational databases we can use. But yeah, if we are not compromising with the performance, so why to compromise with the performance of the database? Okay, so it also has to be upgraded version, right? The SQL now have become the NoSQL. Okay, so we have to think in all the upgraded versions. If we are choosing any sort of a stack which is like, it's going outdated, it's not getting it is open source, suppose it is an open source, but the community is not taking part in sort of a development and all those stuff, so why to choose all those sort of a stacks, right? For that perspective, be a win-win situation, be in a safer side, always choose sort of a stacks which you can say that it will also go for 7 years or coming 5 to 6 years, right? Because you don't want your applications to get outdated too early or too sort of a things, right? Because the client, if they hire you for 4 years or 3 years for a sort of one single application, they don't want to get it older or sort of a deteriorated within a year or two, right? So they want a sort of an application, a full-fledged stack, which will help you from the database till the development, like from the production to the deployment, right? So everything you have to think in mind. Now, since it is written in the very first bullet point that the main stack uses the AngularJS as its front-end framework, which has a steeper learning curve compared to the React.js used by the MERN stack. Okay, very simple. Like, suppose you start with a self-study, right? You guys are familiar with the JavaScript. The HTML you start with, okay, or suppose you start with a DSA, right? Suppose you get a pre-boot or boot camp sort of a registration being done, and you are in GUVI and you are learning with a DSA, right? So you will everyone have to learn with the DSA part of it. Then you have to go with the HTML, then CSS, then JavaScript, right? Up till the JavaScript, the path is same. Why? Because both of them are libraries or either the frameworks. But yeah, what, to whom they are the libraries and frameworks? They are for the libraries and frameworks of JavaScript, right? So up till the JavaScript, the path will be the same. Now you will get a sort of a differentiating factor depending upon your requirements and the learning curve. Like, suppose you have your placements been coming, or you want your uh, work to be done, and you have the flexibility of choosing MERN enemy. Definitely, first of all, learn with the MERN, because get familiar with that particular thing, because the learning curve, or what you say, the time duration for learning the mean, the MERN is very much less as compared to the mean, because the angular part takes a little bit more time in this particular mean. And MEN means the MongoDB Express and N part of it is the same, but anyhow, the Angular takes a little bit more time. It can take a lot of time. So definitely you have to think like that. Okay. So yeah. So the architecture, what we had discussed earlier. So mean stack uses the MVC architecture, and what we say, the model, view, and the controller. Means the model is the data or database, view what you can see in an application, the very first user, and the controller means the logic part of it is defined in this. Okay, whereas in the React part of it, the React or the MERN stack, on the other hand, is not strictly the MVC or MVVM architecture. See, everything has an architecture, right? Without the architecture, you can't set a goal and create an application, right? There should be a sort of flow, starting with the controller, starting with the routes to the controller, then view and the models and all those stuff, right? So we know about the MVC, but now the question arises that what is MVVM, right? So it was the very first sort of an architectural pattern, which a sort of what we can say, the Android applications or sort of an applications which the .NET might be using it, right? So MVVM stands for model view model, right? So that is a sort of an architecture from view model to view, and then view to model architecture, but it is very much outdated sort of an architecture. Now MVC, it's been used by, suppose, .NET. Okay, .NET uses the MVC. Okay, the Angular is also using the MVC, as you know, right? So these sort of an architecture, MVC, it's been used nowadays. But yeah, definitely if you get in sort of an three-tier architecture, what MERN uses. So MERN actually uses a presentation, application, and sort of a data layer architecture. Okay, but it doesn't fits with the MVC thing, right? The purpose is same. Like the presentation is the very first the layer which you see as a user, right? That is known as a presentation layer, right? With the logical part and data part is basically saved in a data layer, right? And the application handles every sort of a controller based things, right? So definitely you can use that. So you might be familiar, and once you come into the industry, you will see many clients go with a .NET and Angular. Okay, mean is fine, mean stack is fine, but yeah, the combination apart from mean stack is also .NET with Angular. Okay, that is something in an enterprise level. Okay, once you create a sort of a very large applications, like suppose an inventory management, right? So in those sort of applications, a .NET is also considered one of the backend sort of a stack with the Angular, right? So it's also one of the combinations. The mean stack is a combination, but yeah, definitely we can use the .NET and favorable combination with .NET and the Angular. Okay, so once you get the self-learning, or what you can say, the sort of courses being taken up, then definitely you will learn everything. And this is just the webinar, so we are like telling you the overview of the things, like what are the other stacks which are being familiar in the market, or what sort of stacks are there apart from the sort of Express JS and Node and Mongo. We can use .NET as well, right? For the sort of a thing, right? So as we have been coming to the next topic is the community support, ecosystem deployment, and the maintenance. Okay, so as I have told in the comparison of the MERN and the mean, so the A and R part is the sort of an question, right? The question majorly is the Angular versus the React. Okay, but yeah, definitely the mean or the MERN, right? So that is the secondary thing, but yeah, the Angular and the React should be the major question for this, right? So yeah, so what we have been found that the mean stack has a larger community, means the Angular has a larger community. Okay, but yeah, we can't say that MERN is not growing, and it's not a debatable thing, but yeah, The MERN has a larger community. It has a NG support community, right? The NG community. You can Google it and see NG support community or NG community. You will find how many people have joined that sort of open source community, right? Everything is open source, right? You can see their sort of a things. You can you can collaborate, and you can basically create the PRs. You can create your own sort of a codes. You can ask for them for the approvals, and also it's on all open source, right? What is an open source and a closed source, right? Open source means you can take their sort of a library or framework what they have. Okay, you can create your own sort of libraries. Like suppose you want to create your own loaders, right? The loader which you see, right? You want to get your loader inserted into that code which they already have, so you can definitely contribute your codes. You can write your code. So that sort of things is known as an open source. And a closed source means you just have to use it. You can't contribute much into it, right? So that is known as a closed source libraries, or we can say the frameworks. Okay, definitely. Now, yeah, I guess there is some question. Okay, there is something. Hari, you can see this over the Q&A session section there. Yeah. So now comes the stack which you will choose, right? So I want some volunteers uh, to sort of, like, suppose I give you this the I'm suppose I'm the client, right? And you're working in GUVI, right? And I gave you the sort of requirements, and depending upon the requirements and what you have learned and what you have gained, I want that you tell me that which sort of a technology and tech stacks you would be choosing. I'm not in the favor of, first of all, I would be telling you, I'm not in the favor of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript now, because it's just for the learning, right? You don't want to get over, we have to get over with those sort of things which won't be giving you the much sort of a profitable to your business, right? Business means, like, suppose I want a sort of a Ola application or Rapido application, right? I want to create my Rapido application, and I want a very interactive UI. I want my code to be clean. It's not only the work you have to show, right? It's not only I'm the thing that I'm showing, I'm seeing the application and it's working, it's fine. It's not like that. I want my code to be clean. I want my architect to be very fine minded, right? I don't want that he's very confused or she's very confused, and she or he doesn't take so much more responsibilities in creating the tech stacks and informing it to the clients. No, everything has to be very much sort of a broad minded. Okay, and everything has to be think in prior, you know, everything has to be think in prior before moving further, right? So I'm not in the favor of any HTML, CSS, JavaScript now. But yeah, you can choose any sort of a stack, either MERN or a MERN. Why I came with MERN or a MERN and not other stack like Django, or you can say these sort of the things? Because I have, as a client, I have done the prior sort of the analysis that I'm creating a web app or web application, and for that particular requirement, we don't have to create much sort of the complex architecture. Like suppose a Django architecture, I don't want any sort of a machine learning thing. I don't want any sort of a sort of a machine interactive course. I want a very simple application where my applications at a backend engineers, I want the APIs to be integrated, and from the front end I want a very good performant good sort of a UI, interactive UI, with the sort of good performance things. Okay, I'm not worried about what is a community support. I'm not worried. Okay, now anyone can tell me, depending upon my requirements, that what MERN or whether the MERN stack they would be choosing, right? I want my performance to be better. I'm not like, I don't want that sort of a community support. I don't want my support for this. I want the development to be very much headstrong, that it takes care of everything. Okay, so anyone can like tell me. Yeah, definitely. See, Java, Spring Boot, like, see, definitely. So Node is basically taking a much more part, and Java are almost the sort of having the similar features, right? If we say, like, suppose I am a client, right? I came to you and you suggest me for a good interactive web application UI. You get familiar with the React thing, and I also agreed with the React. Okay, now coming to the backend part. So Java definitely also has a very good of a support. It has a very huge community and all. But yeah, Spring Boot definitely also has an MVC architecture, right? And Node also is getting familiar because of its multiple things. Like suppose of a performance things, the single threadedness, right? The single threadedness, it can also handle your async tasks and all. And moreover, the sort of, see, the Java is the parent of everything, right? The Java is the parent of everything. We can't neglect that the Java is much or the Node is much better than thing. But yeah, definitely for the nodes, as we know, it's basically the JavaScript environment as a whole, right? We want to develop in the sort use sort of a Java Spring Boot, or we can't use the sort of the Python or the Flask, or we can't use the Django. It's not like that. It means if we don't want a complex sort of an architecture, right? We don't want a sorted architecture where we are having a Spring Boot MVC architecture. I just want a very simple application where my backend is just responsible for creating the REST API. For that perspective and for that particular environment, common thing that is of JavaScript. That is why we are going with the MERN and a mean. Okay, doesn't means, again I'm saying, doesn't means that we can't choose the Java Spring Boot or we can't choose the Django and Flask. But yeah, the environment is the same. The node is also that much familiar. Okay, and that the performance, the single threadedness, everything. If you ask for the multitasking, we can do in Node. We can do the multi-threading in Node. We can do the same in Java also, right? So Node is not sort of that bad, we can say, in Java. But yeah, definitely the Java has a much more sort of an community support and all those things. But I don't want to waste time in all those stuffs which might be more complex, and I can achieve that thing in a simpler way as well, right? So for that purpose, the Node is much more sort of a backend technology taken as compared to other Java and Python. I will give you the very simple example. Okay, in my current organization, we are using the React and the Python, suppose, right? And for Python, why? Like, I if I would have been thought, like, why not Node, right? Why? Because the MERN is the best and mean is the best. No, the thing is the choice, what you are doing it, and for what purpose you are doing it, and what thing you want to achieve out of that is the technology stack you have to think of. Suppose I'm doing the embedded system thing, right? I want my Raspberry Pi things and all those stuff. So I chose Python as my backend. I chose Flask as my backend. Okay, Flask is actually the web application for framework for Python, right? So I chose backend as a Python or Flask, we can say, as a backend, and React we are doing in a front end. Okay, so because requirement was for the embedded systems, means I want my machine to interact with my code. So for that purpose, I chose the what we say, the Python. Okay, but what if, like, the requirement were very simple REST APIs? Okay, simple CRUD operations like create, read. Okay, the read data from the database, or you can say the create table in a database, or what. Definitely we would have chosen the Node. Okay, the features of Java and Node are almost the same: multi-threading, multitasking, and all the blah blah things. We can do it, right? So for that purpose, an environment is also the same, right? I don't have to take care of the environment, different environments, right? If the Node environment is same, definitely I can do it in a much more better way. Okay, so for that purpose we are doing it. Okay, so it's not the requirement. That is what I'm saying. The requirement is the uh, initial prior thing. We have to get it. If the client is coming for the embedded system things, okay, he want the UI also, he want the dashboard also, you will go with the React or Angular. Okay, depending upon the learning curves, what you know, what you get. okay, how much you can get it, what components you can do, you can choose in React or Angular. But for the backend, definitely you can choose apart from Node also. Got it? So like okay, because we have like covered the community support, we have covered the architecture, we have covered the learning curves, the companies, the real-time companies, definitely we have covered. Okay, so there are multiple companies which are migrating from the Angular to React. Okay, so I haven't heard in last 5 years that the companies are migrating from React to Angular. I have never heard, but I have heard multiple people saying that they had an application that already is already being there in Angular, but they are facing some performance issues. They want the application architecture to be very much simpler. Okay, because Angular follows the MVC architecture. It has a much more sort of rigidity. Okay, the word is rigidity is fine. The much more rigidity, and React created into our sort of understanding according to migrating from Angular to.